guys, what's up? It's me, Bridget, and I'm back with another video! Okay, so it's day 2. We're talking about the little match girl today. This part of the chapter really hit for me, so I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. Let's just dive in, honestly. A little introduction. This story is a warning of what happens when the psyche is negatively mesmerized by a dream and allows real life to die. Here is the story. In the book, Esty says, "Soft dreams under hard conditions are no good. That in tough times we must have tough dreams, real dreams, those that, if we work diligently and drink our milk to the health of the virgin, will come true." This is the story. The little match girl. There was a little girl child who had neither a mother nor a father, and she lived in a dark forest. There was a village at the edge of the forest, and she had learned that she could buy matches for a half-penny there, and that she could sell them on the street for a full penny. If she sold enough matches, she could buy a crust of bread, return to her lean-to in the forest, and sleep there dressed in all the clothes that she owned. The winter came and it was very cold. She had no shoes and her coat was so thin she could see through it. Her feet were past the point of being blue. Her toes were white, so were her fingers and the end of her nose. She wandered the streets and begged strangers, would they please buy matches from her? But no one stopped and no one paid her any attention. So she sat down one evening saying, "I have matches. I can light a fire and I can warm myself." But she had no kindling and no wood. She decided to light the matches anyways. As she sat there with her legs straight out in front of her, she struck the first match. As she did, it seemed that the cold and the snow disappeared altogether. What she saw, instead of swirling snow, was a room, a beautiful room with a dark green ceramic stove, with a door with iron scroll work. The stove emanated so much heat it made the air wavy. She snuggled up close to the stove and it felt heavenly. But all of a sudden the stove went out and she was again sitting in the snow, shivering so bitterly the bones in her face chimed. And so she struck the second match, and the light fell upon the wall of the building next to where she sat, and she could suddenly see through it. In the room behind the wall was a snowy cloth covering a table, and there on the table were china plates of the purest white, and on a platter was a goose that had just been cooked. And just as she was reaching for this repast, the vision disappeared. She was again in the snow, but now her knees and hips no longer hurt. Now the cold was stinging and burning its way up her arms and torso. So she lit the third match. And in the light of the third match was a beautiful Christmas tree, beautifully decorated with white candles with lacy ruffs, and beautiful glass ornaments, and thousands of little dots of light that she couldn't quite make out. And she looked up at the trunk of this enormous tree that went higher and higher and stretched farther and farther toward the ceiling until it became the stars in the heavens over her head. And suddenly a star blazed across the sky, and she remembered her mother had told her that when a soul dies, a star falls. And out of nowhere, her grandmother appeared, so warm and so kind, and the child felt so happy to see her. The grandmother picked up her apron and put it around the child, held her close with both arms, and the child was content. But the grandmother began to fade, and the child struck more and more matches to keep the grandmother with her, and more matches to keep the grandmother with her, and more, and together she and the grandmother began to rise together up into the sky where there was no cold, no hunger, and no pain. and in the morning, between the houses, the child was found, still and gone. So the little match girl has 3 problems. Number 1, she lives in a community who does not care. They don't care that there's a little orphan girl running around with no food or water or home to live in. Number 2, she has a community that does not value her. They don't value her matchsticks, they don't want to buy her product, and they don't even value her ingenuity in being such an amazing entrepreneur to even sell the matchsticks in the first place. Number 3 is her own resignation to this life. She knows the circumstances of her life. She's figured out a plan to make her life somewhat better in order to buy food, but aside from that, she's okay with her life as it is. She wants to live exactly in the place that she is and doesn't think of anything or try to think of anything in order to save her from this situation. Estes says in the book, "To avoid being the little match girl, there is one major action you must take. Anyone who does not support your art, your life, is not worth your time." Harsh, but true. Otherwise, one walks right in and dresses in the rags of the match girl and is compelled to live a quarter life that freezes all thought, hope, gifts, writings, playings, designings, and dancing. Clearly, the match girl of the story should have one goal, and that goal should be warmth and finding some. She recognizes that she's in a place where she cannot thrive. She recognizes that she has no kindling, no firewood, and only the matches. Yet, she chooses their measly 2-second fires to keep maybe her fingertips warm, rather than trying to find another solution. Because the match girl decides to follow the instant gratification of the 2-second warmth that the matches give her, she has no sustenance. She lives in a fantasy. Estes describes 3 different types of fantasies that exist. In the book, she says, there are 3 kinds of fantasies. The first is the pleasure fantasy. It is a form of mind ice cream, strictly for enjoyment, such as daydreams. The second kind of fantasy is intentional imagining. This kind of fantasy is like a planning session. It is used as a vehicle to take us forward into action. All successes, psychological, spiritual, financial, and creative, begin with fantasies of this nature. Then, there's the third kind of fantasy, the kind that brings everything to halt. This is the kind of fantasy that hinders right action during critical times. Unfortunately, this is the kind the match girl spins. It is a fantasy that has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with feeling nothing can be done, or that a thing is too hard to do, so one might as well sink into the idle fantasy. Sometimes the fantasy is in a woman's mind. Sometimes it comes to her through a liquor bottle, a needle, or lack of one. Sometimes the smoke of a weed is the transporter, or many forgettable rooms complete with beds and strangers. Women in these situations are playing out the little match girl in every night of fantasies and more fantasies, and waking up dead and frozen at every daybreak. There are many ways to lose one's intent, to lose one's focus. I've been here. I currently am here. Not to get into like whole different level of spirituality and stuff, but my rising sign is Pisces, and I like to blame that for my tendency to rush towards escapism. Ever since I was a little girl, my mom has always talked about how I am an escapist. I like to distract myself from my emotions and really, really don't like dealing with negative emotions and or negative situations. When I was younger, I just simply didn't believe that was true. I thought that I was a tough girl and I dealt with stuff. But as I've gotten older and looking back on situations that happened in my childhood, I definitely recognize where I did do that. I ran away a lot from situations, and now it's become so much so of a habit that I literally don't even recognize when I do it sometimes. Like, for instance, sometimes like I'll be in an argument with someone and I just start playing a game on my phone, or like I get nervous about things and I just like go scroll on Instagram, or like I'll just change subjects when we're talking about deep situations or deep conversations. I'll just get uncomfortable and just completely change the subject or make a joke or something. I even remember when I was younger, my dad has always been through really like difficult health issues, and when I was a kid, there was this one time when he had sepsis, which is a blood disease that kills, I think, like 95% of people who get it, and doctors told us to say our goodbyes, and that was like one of the hardest things that I like witnessed in my life. And rather than being vulnerable and dealing with the situation, because that's my biggest fear, I hate doing that, I started making a lot of jokes. I made my dad laugh, made my mom laugh, and I think that might have been like the first time when I realized like that this toxic behavior that I do in order to avoid my problems is actually something that people like. And I continued to do that regularly for a long time afterwards. And I still do. I still have a hard time with acknowledging things that are going on. Like, I am the little match girl. If you've ever met the little match girl, like, hello, I am her. That's my name. I'm really working on not doing this anymore. Like, really, really working on it. Like, trying to grow discipline, trying to just follow like what is right and better to do with my life, if that makes sense. It's a process. It takes time. It's actually what I'm documenting through this YouTube channel, because I feel like sharing my story and being like somewhat accountable to wanting to upload regularly and stuff like that like makes me actually do things, because I don't want to let anybody down. And I know that people are watching and stuff, and so I'm trying to like use this as a way to finally kick myself in the ass and be like, Bridget, care about your fucking life. Like, make something happen in your life, because in your head you care a lot, but based on your actions no one can tell, because you throw it away every 2 seconds. See that laugh that I do? That's that whole escapism thing. Like, I can't handle being vulnerable and like not laughing about it. So anyways, back to the book. How do we restore the lust to life? How do we figure out a way to feel settled in what's going on in life and push through the shitty times in order to make it to the other side? How do we not escape and run to the fantasy, but begin to create the fantasy in real life? That is the question. The answer is nurture. It is perfectly normal, and most people cannot just solely run on their own energy and their own steam. You need nutrition. You need nurturing. The first step to finding that nurturing is to move. Like all living things, we need warmth in order to survive, and most of us get that warmth from the sun. However, unlike plants or other living things, we have the ability to discern. We have the ability to move. We have legs. And the first step to finding nurture is to move, to get up, to find warmth and be around it. Friends are a great example of this natural warmth, this sun. Esty says in the book, friends who love you and have warmth for your creative life are the very best suns in the world. When a woman, like the little match girl, has no friends, she also becomes frozen by anguish, and sometimes by anger as well. Even if one has friends, those friends may not be suns. They may give comfort instead of informing the woman about her increasingly frozen circumstances. They comfort her, but that is far different from nurture. Nurture moves you from one place to another. Nurture is like psychic Wheaties. The difference between comfort and nurture is this. If you have a plant that is sick because you keep it in a dark closet, and you go in there and you say some soothing words to it, that is comfort. If you take the plant out of the closet and put it in the sun, give it something to drink, and then talk to it, that is nurture. This is what I meant by this chapter hitting hard for me. This lesson, that lesson right there, the difference between comfort and nurture, is something that I'm trying my best to ingrain in myself, something that I need in my life, and something that I'm like learning. I very often throughout life have been the type of person who does not want like real nurturing. I am really stubborn. I like to do things on my own, and when people try to like force me to do things or tell me to do things, I really usually don't listen, and a lot of times it's simply because I just don't like being told what to do. And I can be honest about that. That's the truth. But I have people in my life who stick around and try and like constantly tell me like more ways to do things. And then I also have people who are in my life who stick around because they like the story, possibly. Like, I don't know. I don't want to say that's the reason why. But like, you know those people who you can vent to? Like, you can call them up and just talk for hours and stuff, and they'll never tell you anything of like what you should do differently, like what, you know, should change in the situation. They just kind of listen. Those people are comforters. And maybe they love you, and maybe that's their way of showing love, but that's not what you need. You need nurturing. You need those people who when you call them, you tell them everything. And maybe sometimes you don't want to tell them everything because you're afraid of what they're going to respond. But you will tell them everything, and you know that they're going to tell you when you were acting crazy, when you were acting petty. They're going to tell you what to do. They're going to tell you not what to do, but they're going to tell you, girl, you need a break, and you need to take some time for yourself and think about some things because you're making weird decisions. They're going to tell you these things because they care about you and they want you to do better. And maybe they don't know all the answers, but they'll try for you. Those are nurturers, and that's what I'm finding is important to have. Really important to have. I've been a frozen woman many, many times in my life. I've let my like ideals of escapism push me down roads of just literally being frozen beneath the surface in icebergs of being frozen. Estes talks in the book about certain fantasies that frozen women have, and I've literally done pretty much all of them myself, from the someday I'll do this, the if only I had this camera, this computer, if only I had this amount of followers, if only I lived here, if only I went there, if only I weren't homeschooled, if only I were finished college, like just all of these things. He will change. I just have to wait. He'll change. I just have to keep praying more. If I just learn to control myself with money, if I just learn to control myself with weed, if I just learn to stop like wanting to go to the club so often, if I just learn to stop falling in love so easily, if I just learn to like stop chasing after boys who don't want me. Luckily, it's not a situation in my life right now, just FYI, but that has been me in the past. I have been through all of these fantasies and chasing after them. In the story, the girl's only possession of value is her matchsticks, and she burns them all away in a futile effort to make herself warm. With these fantasies, we're all burning away our matchsticks. We're burning away our light. We're burning away our value with the what ifs, with the time, with the people who don't deserve it. In the book, Estes says, when the match girl decides to burn the matches, she uses her resources to fantasize instead of act. She uses her energy in a momentary kind of way. This shows up in obvious ways in women's life. She's determined to go to college, but takes 3 years to make up her mind about which one. She is going to do that series of paintings, but since she has no place to hang such a show, she doesn't make painting a priority. She wants to do this or that, but doesn't take the time to learn, to develop the sensitivity or skill to do it well. She has 10 notebooks full of dreams, but is caught in her fascination with the interpretation and cannot put their meanings into action. She knows she must leave, begin, stop, go, but she doesn't. And so we see why. When a woman is frozen of feeling, when she can no longer feel herself, when her blood, her passion no longer reaches the extremities of her psyche, when she is desperate, then a fantasy life is far more pleasurable than anything else she can set her sights upon. Her little match lights, because they have no wood to burn, instead burn up the psyche as though it were a big dry log. The psyche begins to play tricks on itself. It lives now in the fantasy fire of all yearning fulfilled. This kind of fantasizing is like a lie. If you tell it often enough, you'll begin to believe it. The final scenes of the story, with the morbid grandmother kind of soothing the child on into the afterlife and death, actually represents a bright side of our psyches. It is a psychic fact that when libido or energy wanes to the point where its breath no longer shows up on the mirror, some representation of the life-death-life nature shows up, here portrayed by the grandmother. It is her work to arrive at the death of something, to incubate the soul that has left its husk behind, and to care for the soul till it can be born anew. And that is the blessedness of everyone's psyche. Even in the event of such a painful ending as the Match Girls, there is a ray of light. When enough time, discontent, and pressure have been brought to bear, the wild woman of the psyche will hurl new life into the woman's mind, giving her opportunity to act in her own behalf once more. As we can see from the suffering involved, it is far better to heal one's addiction to fantasy than wait around wishing and hoping to be raised from the dead. So that's the end of this video, this part of the chapter, and the little Match Girls story. This one, probably more than any other one, and I feel like I say this every single video, but I swear, like, this one really, like, was exactly what I've been doing with my life. Like, I really struggle with this. I really have a tendency to, like, escape real life, and then when I come back to life, realize how much I fucked up. And I'm really getting tired of doing it, because I want to make my life better. I'm tired of fucking up and then coming back and realizing that I fucked up. So I want to talk a little bit about ways that I'm working on being better. And hopefully you guys can share in the comments ways that you're maybe working on being better about this. If this even affects you, who knows. But personally, I'm working on having better friendships. I have some people in my life who I'm recognizing, it's like, this is the person who always calls me to, like, vent, but, like, never has anything to say, or I always call to vent, but never has anything to say about, like, what could be better and, like, what to do better. This is the person who, whenever I call them and vent, of course they listen to me and stuff, but they usually are like, this is what you should do better. Honestly, aside from my boyfriend, I don't think I have anyone in my life who actually, like, cares enough to, like, keep checking in. I mean, you know, my parents and my boyfriend. Well, my mom and my boyfriend. They care, like, enough to, like, make sure that ongoingly I'm working on issues that I've talked to them about. So, I'm working on finding more of those type of people, and I'm working on being that type of friend to myself. I'm working on holding myself accountable. I'm working on, like, pushing myself to move towards the sun, to move towards things that are nourishing to me and matter to me, and, like, hold true to what matters to me. So, yeah, wish me luck on that. I'll keep you guys updated. Let me know what your journey's like with this, because I'd love to have someone else along with me, not doing this by myself. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace. Bye. Woo! Wait, before you go, I'm sure I already asked you guys this, and hopefully you already have, but just in case you haven't, make sure you like and comment on this video, and go ahead and share it with your friends too. If you guys enjoyed that video and would like to continue to hang out with me, go ahead and follow my Instagram, yo! I post on there way more often than I do YouTube, and I also respond to my DMs so we could be real friends in, like, real life, you know? Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and if you're looking for more stuff to watch, this was my last video, and I think you'd really like this video right here, so check it out. I'll be waiting. Go ahead and click whenever you're ready. I'll be waiting. Okay, hopefully you've clicked now. Bye.